Good morning. What's happening, guys? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels and got my morning coffee, got a little bit of time to kill. Figured we would knock out a video. It seems like the big media narrative going on right now is how all these workers are quitting. People are taking mini sabbaticals. People are quitting their jobs to take better jobs. People are taking time off to travel, to spend time with their kids. People are starting businesses. Some people are retiring early. And so that's kind of what we're seeing all these stories about here recently. And one thing that one thing that I was kind of wondering about, the media loves, these narratives, right? And I think we have to kind of take them with a grain of salt. I've covered several stories over the years about, 74% of millennials regret their home purchase. And in reality, 74% of millennials don't regret their home purchase. Like, right, the media will find a couple people who overall are happy with their home purchase, but oh, I wish my house had granite countertops instead of Formica. And now they can spin this story into 74% of millennials regret their home purchase because somebody wishes that they had granite countertops instead of Formica, even though overall, in reality, people are overwhelmingly happy with their home purchase. So I think we have to take these stories with a grain of salt. But another media narrative that we've constantly been seeing for years, and that still pops up during slow news cycles, is, 80% of Americans don't have $500 for an emergency. 80 Americans don't have $400 to carry them through an emergency. We hear all these stories about how nobody has any money to sustain an emergency, yet now all of a sudden there's 11 million unfilled jobs and everybody can just afford to stay at home and do nothing. And so it kind of got me wondering, like, what the heck, everybody who's quitting these jobs, like, what the heck is everybody doing? No, yeah, granted, there's people who got money in the bank and are just deciding to take some time off. You have some people who have started businesses, but a lot of these unfilled jobs are with lower wage workers, people working the service business, barbacks, bartenders, waiters, waitresses, retail workers. I've worked in those jobs before. I never made a lot of money in those jobs. I never had much in savings. And I don't know that I'd be able to just sit out of the workforce for months at a time. No, we have had like enhanced unemployment benefits. Some states are starting to cut them off. In other states, they're going through September. But all these stories have kind of had me wondering, like, how are people living with no money? As long as the enhanced unemployment benefits last and eviction moratoriums are in place, I guess people have the luxury to do that. But as we, near the end of summer, as September comes around, I think there's going to be a mass return to the workforce as people realize that they actually need to make money to live and feed themselves and put a roof over their heads. But I saw an interesting story in The Insider titled "Workers Are Epiphany Quitting Their Jobs After Reevaluating Their Lives." And here's another thing that we have to look at with these stories. A lot of times these stories act as if everybody has some like highly in-demand skill, right? Everybody's a coder, everybody's a programmer, everybody has these high-paying, in-demand skills and can just decide to work remotely or buy a ranch out in Montana and go, live and work remote there. And the reality is that most people aren't in those situations, but I just Googled worker, and let's take a look at these stories before we hop into this article. So workers are epiphany quitting their jobs. With workers in high demand, some mass employers try incentives. I'm not going to click that one to read it, but I assume to bring people back into the fold. These jobs have yet to be filled, and it's hurting the economy, from NPR. The BBC, The Great Resignation, how employers drove workers to quit. Would 8, as U.S. companies scramble to hire workers enjoy the upper hand. From Reuters, U.S. unemployment likely accelerated in June as companies boost perks. Fox News, June jobs report to show gains, but employers still search for workers. CNBC, 4 people share how being able to work remotely has forever changed their lives. I actually read an interesting article the other day, and I think I sent it to myself. I think we're going to cover it in a future video in the coming days. It was basically the culture war about returning to the office. And, even though there's this narrative that everybody's loving working from home, I think there's something like 36% of workers actually want to return to the office. Like, they like their commutes. They like that their workplace used to bring lunch into the office. They like that their workplace has a gym. They like getting out of the house. They like having some social interaction. There was a good percentage of people who would prefer to work remotely, and then there was a good percentage of people who didn't really seem to care. Another article from CNBC, Denny's CEO says hiring workers has been a challenge. Let's see. Okay, so let's hop into this insider. And again, this one covers the story of I think 3 or 4 individuals. One woman worked in marketing and PR for a college. She went on to start her own PR firm. For those of you guys interested in the fire lifestyle, there was another woman here who I believe worked in marketing, and I think she started her own blog. And they say she retired. I think she's actually living off, blogging income and affiliate income. But they say, quote unquote, she retired. She's not working for her employer anymore. I think somebody else in here moved to the Netherlands and took a job as a programmer. But let's take a look at this. This is from the Business Insider. Workers are epiphany quitting their jobs after the pandemic forced them to rethink everything about their lives. So, bullet points: the pandemic prompted people to reevaluate their personal and professional fulfillment. With new clarity and urgency, some people left their jobs to pursue new priorities. Some people said they quit to start a business or move to another country in search of a better work-life balance. Let's hop in here. Lauren Goode had been working in healthcare administration for about a decade when the pandemic struck. At the time, Goode had a 9-month-old daughter and struggled navigating new motherhood alongside her demanding job. Seeing so many people around me losing their lives, losing their loved ones, losing their jobs, it put things into perspective, she told Insider. I said to myself, why am I like busting my butt for a place that doesn't even really support me? So Goode quit in September. 5 months later, she had become a pre and postnatal health coach to provide the support she said her workplace never gave her following her pregnancy. Goode is among a group of workers who could be called epiphany quitters for deciding to quit their jobs after reevaluating their lives in the midst of the pandemic. Insider spoke with 9 people who said they quit their jobs within the last year to pursue new priorities. Several people walked away without other offers ready. Some started businesses, others moved to another country or retired early. The state of the pandemic job market deterred many people from quitting in case they couldn't find other work, but with hiring now on the upswing, emboldened workers are taking their chances in greater numbers. 4 million Americans quit their jobs in April, a 20-year high. And here's the thing, I think early on during the pandemic, everybody was very, at first I think people were legitimately scared, right? Nobody knew what we were dealing with. The 24-hour news cycle was really hyping this up, and people were terrified. People weren't buying houses. People weren't moving. People weren't changing jobs. People were kind of putting things on hold and saying, I'm just going to see what winds up happening here. Well, we kind of quickly realized that things maybe aren't as bad as the media made them out to be. And, people started kind of getting back to switching jobs. I actually had a buddy who I was kind of surprised. He worked for a marijuana company. He worked in accounting. Besides just kind of being a cool industry to work in, he got 40% off of his weed. And surprisingly, he quit to go work for a logistics company. But we're starting to see people being less cautious and holding onto their jobs less and being willing to take some risks. And obviously, there are a ton of jobs out there. And companies are having to compete for workers, so people are definitely a lot more comfortable leaving a job, and many people are landing on their feet and winding up with higher paying or better jobs than before. Workers are finally fed up and saying, the jig is up, said Sylvia Allegretto, co-chair of the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics at UC Berkeley, pivoting from constant fire and looking for a big change. Pandemic burnout. Oh, and here's another interesting thing, just from kind of seeing people talk on forums or Reddit or whatever else. Will a lot of people talk about how much time they had on their hands during the pandemic and they enjoyed this slower pace of life? In a lot of industries, things were busier than ever. I see a lot of people who are like, man, for most of the pandemic, I was working like 60-hour weeks. Things were nonstop. So it's really interesting how different people, depending on your industry, your job, your company, had much different experiences during the pandemic. Pandemic burnout and weakened work-life boundaries motivated some people to start businesses to wrest back control over their lives in a year that took much of that away. Jen Reeves is one of them. She was working in communications for the University of Missouri last summer when she started a consulting firm on the side. Increased work demands during the pandemic, which Reeves described as constant fire, compelled her to quit in October and run her business full-time. Everything was so constantly urgent at her former job, she said. It's strange to think that the pandemic offered something positive, but I do think it was the one push that finally got me into doing what I was meant to do. For others, pandemic-inspired epiphanies meant leaving the workforce altogether. The anonymous writer behind the finance blog A Purple Life said she left her marketing job in October and retired at 30 after spending 5 years working toward an early retirement goal. So this is kind of the fire lifestyle. She quit to move closer to family and care for them if they got sick. It was a global pandemic that seemed to disproportionately harm people of color. I'm a black woman, so I was worried even more so for my family, she said. I don't really care about the money in comparison. Some workers quit so they could relocate. Jessica Byrne, a software engineer, said she left Santa Barbara, California in March to join a micro-mobility startup in Amsterdam for a better work-life balance and travel opportunities. After being cooped up from the pandemic for so long, I knew I needed a big change, she said. I wanted a culture that appreciated lots of time off and understood that there's more to life than just staying at home coding. I didn't want to be expected to be tethered to my computer. As the economic reopening continues, quit rates may keep rising, especially among those who have the financial freedom to leave their jobs. 44% of U.S. workers plan to look for new jobs in the next year, according to the study conducted by experience management company Qualtrics. The reasons for doing so include burnout, stress, lack of growth opportunities, and a desire for higher pay. The fact that workers are quitting is a sign of optimism, said Allegretto. It's also a sign that workers are gaining more bargaining power. People are saying, I need to make a change here. Things weren't working. There seems to be some better opportunity out there. I can maybe bargain for a higher wage. Maybe I can bargain for some benefits, Allegretto said. And that's a really good thing because that's been lacking for too long. Let's see, are we loading? Okay, so it looks like that is the end of the article. I don't know, thought that one was interesting. Thought you guys might enjoy it. If you guys enjoyed the article, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button below, ring the bell, and as always, curious to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment down below. I'll catch you guys on the next video.